Welcome back to another Every Movie I Watched in Insert Month here, specifically February. I watched some really great films in February. I watched some really bad films in February, and I saw a lot of films. I think in February, the trend tended to be mid films, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I'd rather see a lot of mid films than bad films. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. Hit the big bass boom! Up first, I watched Tomorrowland. Now, this is because I'm making a video coming soon, and you want to subscribe if you don't miss it, where I'm going to be ranking every single Brad Bird movie. Tomorrowland, so far at least, is his worst film, which is really funny, because that's saying a lot. I still enjoyed Tomorrowland. I still thought it was good. I still would recommend it to people. I think it's his most basic story from a story structure perspective. I think the characters are the least interesting in this movie compared to his other films, but I did still enjoy it. 6.5 out of 10. Then I watched Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and this is kind of a big moment for me because I am personally of the opinion that a 10 out of 10 movie means that it is a perfect movie. And while I'm not fixing to start throwing 10 out of 10s around just every willy-nilly movie that I see, I feel like of any movie I've ever seen, Captain America, I claim Captain America: Winter Soldier is my favorite movie of all time that I have seen. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, I think this deserves a 10. I can't find flaws with it. I have tried to find flaws with this movie. Literally, on this viewing, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna look for the things I don't like about this movie. Okay, there are still some things I dislike, but I think that this is, for one, the best Marvel movie that exists, period, end of story. And for two, I just really, really enjoy it. It can actually make you think better than a hero movie, but it also tickles that part of your brain that's like, ooh, hoo, hoo, action scene. I really, really enjoy this movie. And I'm going to give it the first ever 1 minute movies 10 out of 10. Next, I watched Juror Number Two. And in the mid section of this movie, it's relatively boring, but the last 20 minutes, or maybe the last 30 minutes, I don't know, it was at the beginning of February that I saw this, but the ending of this movie is worth watching this movie for. It was very good. I can't really say anything about it because I don't want to chance spoiling anything about it. I knew literally nothing about this film going into it, and I think that's how you should go into the film if you haven't seen it before. 7.5 out of 10 for me personally. Then I watched A Different Man, and I'm going to get into spoilers for just a minute, because I have a theory about this movie. I think that when crap starts to hit the fan at the end of the movie, and this is my own headcanon, it doesn't mean it's true, and who knows, maybe this theory has been pitched to the director, and the director has shot it down. But I think Edward dies at the end of the movie. I think when the lighting fixture falls on Edward, he dies. He dies in that moment. Because everything up to that point seems feasible. Everything up to that point is, could have happened, could be real. He could have had a psychotic break at the end, right? But after the lighting fixture falls on him, for one, why did Ingrid and Oswald take him in? For two, why did he kill the guy? For three, why did he get out of prison after committing murder in the either first or second degree? And finally, why would Oswald and Ingrid agree to see him at the end? That is my own personal headcanon. I don't know if that is the intention of the director or whatnot. I know there's a lot under the surface of this film, but I personally had a hard time thinking about that, just because it tried to be funny, and it's kind of darkly comedic a time or two, but I just personally didn't care for the ending. The fact that the ending made such little sense, and that there were some very, I would honestly argue, bold in a bad way choices about this movie, that I would give it a 4 out of 10 personally. I just didn't enjoy it. Then I watched Love Hurts in theaters, and I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I remember two things about this movie. For one, there's absolutely zero chemistry between the quote-unquote love interests in this movie. And for two, the action was really, really good. It's an 87 North movie. The action is going to be really, really good. I enjoyed this, but I'm gonna level with you for a second. I don't think I'd ever watch it again. I don't think I could recommend it to people because it is an enormous time sink. If you are looking for some great action and the story comes second, then you'll probably enjoy this movie. I would probably give it a 6 out of 10. Then I watched Alien Romulus, and rather than giving my deep and insightful thoughts on this film, I will instead read my Letterboxd review. 1 star for Kaylee Spaney's performance, another for David Johnson's performance, and the final star for the epic, very cool, very pog space CGI. 6 out of 10 film for me personally. Next up, I watched Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, also for the Brad Bird video. I completely forgot that he directed a Mission Impossible movie. And guess what? It's fun. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I thought it was a fun, entertaining time. I think Ghost Protocol was kind of the shift into the modern Mission Impossible movies, which this is kind of wild to say, but I personally think that the first 3 Mission Impossible movies were the weakest movies of the franchise, which is a wild thing to say, and I know that not that many people agree with me, but part of the reason is because I'm a fan of a bit more polished action, and if you're going to make a spy thriller, I would rather it be thrilling, which 3 was very thrilling, but 1 and 2 were a bit more, 2 in particular sucked. But all of that to say, I enjoyed this a lot. I think it is definitely the start of modern Mission Impossible films, and I would give it an 8 out of 10, personally, okay? Sue me! Next up, I watched a variety of short films, and I watched 2 VeggieTales episodes, and I watched an episode of Laurel and Hardy, which was very entertaining. And rather than giving star or number ratings to short films, I simply give a like or no like. If I didn't leave a like on it, I wouldn't recommend it and I didn't enjoy it. If I did leave a like on it, I would recommend it and did enjoy it. So I liked all 3 of these short films, and I saw another one, but I'm not going to tell you what it was, because it was really, really bad, and I seriously thought about giving it half a star. But regardless, let's move on. Then I watched Watchmen. I'm seriously debating making a full-length video about this movie, because holy crap, I have not hated a superhero movie with such a burning passion this much since Thor Love and Thunder. And you want to know something wild? I would rather watch Thor Love and Thunder. I'd rather watch it. And I hated that movie. Let me give you a quick little synopsis of Watchmen, if I may. I will not go into spoilers. Bad thing happens to superheroes. Interesting scene. Bad things happen to superheroes. Interesting content. Bad thing happens to superheroes. Interesting scene. 2 out of 10 film. This was terrible. Also, someone needs to tell Dr. Manhattan to put away his penis. Then I watched Guns Akimbo, and man, I must have hated myself this way, because I don't remember consciously deciding to watch that many movies in a row that I didn't really enjoy, but Guns Akimbo wasn't very enjoyable. It felt, and this is going to sound extremely mean, and I partially mean it, it felt fake. It didn't feel like a movie. So on one hand, the movie takes itself very, very seriously, but it's such a stupid premise that I wish they would have been more goofy with it. And if you know me, you know I don't particularly care for movies that have very, very dual tones to them. And the action, I'll admit, was like pretty decent, but there was so little action. It was basically like when I started watching this, I was like, okay, this is just gonna be a mindless action movie. And it was more of a mindless drama movie with a couple scenes of action. There were some funny moments. I did laugh, and if you'll notice, I didn't give this like 1 star or anything, but I just don't think it was really worth my time, and I'd give it a 5 out of 10 personally. Next up, I watched Blink twice, and I would like to issue my formal apology to a one Zoe Kravitz, because holy crap did the trailer do a good job of making this movie look bad. But you know what? I enjoyed this. I would recommend it. And something that I like about it is it tackles very, very heavy subject matter. I'm not going to get into that subject matter because guess what? YouTube doesn't like when I talk about that subject matter. It gets into some heavy topics without showing anything. And it's obvious what's happening, but it doesn't show anything. And I'm very happy for that. It's a very interesting movie. I do think they fumbled their rating with the ending just a little bit because the ending kind of made me go, would that really be how that character reacts? I was a little surprised by the ending. My mouth was agape because I was like, wow, this kind of sort of took this from like a 7.5 out of 10 straight down to a 6.5. And that is my final rating of this movie, 6.5 out of 10. Next up, I watched Longlegs. Yet again, did not expect to enjoy this film, but I would say that I enjoyed this. It was well directed. And here's the thing about this movie. I understand people's gripes with this movie. I understand the fact that people would prefer this just be a horror movie, right? My light just died. I would like to clarify. I do still think this is very much a horror movie. There are some jump scares. It's more of a creepy sense than it is, oh my goodness, look at the harpoon going through the guy. Movie later in the month. I liked it. I liked the performances. I didn't care for the ending a ton. I did have to watch an ending explained video, but that also means that the director trusts you to know what you're watching. So I enjoyed the movie. I would give it a 7 out of 10 personally. Let's go on. Next up, I watched Knives Out. And here's something really funny about Knives Out. I distinctly remember not really enjoying this the first time I saw it. I think I saw it, I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it very shortly after that, in like early 2020. Now granted, I also have very, very negative associations with that time because something happened in 2020. I can't really remember what it was, but it made everybody like, stay inside and whatnot. So I can't possibly imagine why I had a negative association with this movie, but I really stinking enjoyed this. This is a good mystery. This is it's interesting. It's not super clear who it is. The twists are good. The characters are, well, most of them are bad, but that is a sign of good writing that you actually dislike characters. And I enjoyed this, honestly. It's a great mystery movie, and I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Then I watched Ted. And here's the thing I dislike about Ted. Ted does the dual feeling thing way too much. Let me try to explain that at least a little bit for you. So, on one hand, you have an actually pretty good premise to Ted, right? Of like, you have to grow up. You have to move on. Friends may exit your life. Friends may come back into your life. So, you have that frankly very, very heavy theme that I feel like you could have approached in a whole lot better of a way if it wasn't Seth MacFarlane who was doing the writing, because I believe he wrote Ted. And then 15 minutes earlier, you have a teddy bear snorting coke. And that's pretty much how this movie goes. It alternates scenes of, okay, this is serious, okay, this is really funny. And I would like to clarify, there are some very funny moments in this, particularly the line about the Apache helicopter was so funny to me because it's so random. It hit really, really well. That was some great comedic timing. And there are some moments that are great comedic timing throughout this, but that can't make up for the fact that this is trying to be extremely funny and also trying to have a very serious undertone. And when you put those together, it's kind of like trying to put a square in a circle hole. it just doesn't work unless you pull out the Apache helicopter, set it down on your little block toy, and just 4 out of 10 film for me personally. Next up, I watched Sicario. And this is one of those movies that's a very hard sell to people because upon the first viewing, you may not necessarily like Sicario. Perfect example, me. I didn't like Sicario the first time I watched it, but the second time I watched it, and granted part of it is that shock factor, like that ending, you probably won't like the ending on the first watching because, frankly, it's depressing. It's a sad ending. It's a inconclusive kind of open ending. Won't get into what it is. Watch Sicario. I like the action. The action was, like, masterfully directed. This is, like, you can see, which I know this is, you know, how filmographies work, but you can see Dune Part 2, because let's get real here, I would consider Dune and Dune Part 2 Denis Villeneuve's masterpieces so far. I can see Dune's action in Sicario in this, which is just cool. It's great action. It's masterful directing. That's not saying I didn't like the fact that there basically wasn't a single happy moment in this movie, but I just really enjoyed this on a rewatch. Again, it's still kind of a hard sell, but I'd give it a 7 out of 10 personally. Then I watched Captain America Brave New World. There are some people crapping on this thing on YouTube. And to be fair, on a rewatch, I think this would get a lot lower of a score from me. But guess what? I enjoyed it. It was a fun time. It was a fun time at the theater. I do think it would be a lot more boring without some of that mystery, and I would also like to say the marketing team fumbled the bag by revealing Red Hulk is in this movie, which I understand that you have to use something to market the movie, like you have to kind of give a villain to market the movie, but it's aggravating because, for one, Red Hulk is not the villain in this film. The villain is written horribly, and the villain is treated horribly, and the villain basically says, they did all these bad things to me, and it's like, show them. Show them, please, because the audience doesn't like it when you tell people and not show them. That was very aggravating. The action was still good. Like, I wish there was more of it, but the opening action scene was pretty good, but not great. There's this one action scene that takes place near Celestial Island in the Indian Ocean. That is some great action. It's great air action, and it makes use of the fact that Captain America, now Sam Wilson, has wings. I was really hoping they would use that a bit more, and yes, I believe he does get a wing ripped off in this movie, but I just enjoyed it. I think it was... I wish it would have focused more on Captain America, because there are some good moments and some good questions brought up with regards to Sam thinking, well, you know, should I take the serum? Should I not take the serum? What is the play there? And there were some really, really good moments with regards to that. I enjoyed it, but they way too hard decided to make this an Incredible Hulk sequel. I don't necessarily think this is a Captain America movie. I think this is more of a The Incredible Hulk sequel. Oh, and also Captain America's here. Which sucks, because I like Sam as a character, and I like Anthony Mackie as an actor. I would have liked to see him have a bit more, frankly, complicated acting happening, whereas his character was, for the most part, one note, except for, again, those scenes that added depth to his character. I don't know. I liked it, but, again, it would probably be pretty boring on a rewatch when you know what's coming, so I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10, most likely. Then I watched The Monkey. I enjoyed this a lot more than Brennan did. We went to see this, and I think I enjoyed it more than he did, because he brought up a very good point. He said that the comedy repeats itself to an almost nauseating level in this movie, and this is basically the comedy, so strap yourself in. No spoilers, by the way. Someone is killed, usually in a gory fashion, thanks to fate, aka the monkey. Characters act like nothing happened. which for the first half of the movie is very fun and very entertaining, and for the second half of the movie it's just like, okay, can you do something else? Are we going to do the same thing over and over again? And the answer is yes, we are going to do the same thing over and over again. I still enjoyed it. I give it a 6.5 out of 10 personally, but I probably wouldn't ever rewatch it just because you can kind of, and this feels a little mean to say, you can kind of watch a YouTube synopsis of what happens in the movie and get all you need to know. I also think that the trailers spoiled kills a little bit too much. None of the kills were incredibly surprising. I think they were creative for a horror movie, but none of them were that surprising or particularly noteworthy. However, the first 10 minutes of the movie are very funny. I laughed a lot. And also, if you're looking for a horror movie, this ain't it, Chief. This is a comedy that happens to be a little scary at times. Something I did like is there was only like 2 jump scares in the movie, which is good because I do not like a movie riddled with jump scares. Oh yeah, 6.5 out of 10 if I forgot to say that as well. Then I watched In the Land of Saints and Sinners, and guess what? This is a Liam Neeson action movie set in the 1970s, set in Ireland? I think Ireland. And it's fine. There's not that much action. As far as Liam Neeson movies go, I haven't seen that many, but it's better than Memory. That's for dadgum certain, and it's better than The Marksman. That's for dadgum certain, but that's not saying that much. This moved very slowly, despite only being like an hour 59 minutes. It moved really slowly. I wish it would have moved faster. It was fine, but it wasn't really anything to write home about. 5 out of 10 film for me personally. Then I watched Tag. I did laugh a couple times while watching Tag, but it's not the type of comedy I would really recommend to someone because it's not particularly unique, and they also do the thing that they did in The Monkey where the comedy is basically just a formula that repeats itself, and that formula is the boys try and catch Jerry. Jerry gets away in a funny or creative way. Insert interesting joke here. Insert chili smoking weed here. That's pretty much all the movie is. And then they kind of have an actually sweet moment at the end, but it's undercut by how positively stupid the rest of the movie is. And I wish they would have telegraphed that a little bit more. Like, nothing that the character... Well, okay, with the exception of one thing that the character does. Nothing really indicates that the ending is coming. It's just kind of oh, hey, we need to wrap this up. By the way, this person... I'm not gonna spoil... I just thought about it and I was like, I probably better not spoil this. But I didn't really care for it all that much. I'd give it a 6 out of 10 for me personally. Then I rewatched Challengers, and this thing has some gorgeous cinematography, some really, really good editing. I know a lot of people don't particularly care for this one shot in the movie where the camera becomes the tennis ball for a little bit. I really love that. Like, I love a creative use of the camera that makes sense within the movie, and that makes sense within the movie. I enjoyed this, and it's difficult to recommend because it's basically terrible people playing tennis for an extended period of time, but it is a good example about how sports is a relationship and uses relationships in the context of sport and uses sports as kind of an allegory for life, sort of. Is allegory the right word? Regardless, I enjoyed this, and I would give it a 7.5 out of 10 for me personally. And I ended the month on an absolute stinker. Batman: The Killing Joke. What were the first 30 minutes of this movie? What weight did they have on the rest of the movie? For one, okay, I'm gonna rant for just a minute. This movie is an hour and 17 minutes long. This is already a short movie. The first third of the movie is completely useless. It adds almost no weight to the story. It's a kind of interesting concept that's building, and it's building, and it's building, and it's building, and bam, it's resolved. And now we get into the movie. 30 minutes in. Now we get into the main point of the movie. A whole third of this movie was basically wasted by the absolutely useless plot at the start of the movie. And it's also a little bit aggravating how a particular character was treated, especially considering that something else comes along to that character later in the film. If you've seen this movie, you know who I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen this movie, don't watch the Batman. Instead, watch the Dark Knight trilogy. Instead, watch the Adam West Batman. Watch any other this is the worst Batman has ever gotten for me. And I'm not gonna lie, I kinda sorta have a bad taste in my mouth about Batman now that I've seen this movie. I'm like, oh, well, that was stinking terrible. This was terrible. By the way, Batman doesn't kill anybody, not that I know of in the movie, but it's just aggravating. This movie, that's the perfect word to describe this movie. It's aggravating, and I didn't enjoy it, and I feel like I wasted time watching it. 4 out of 10 film for me personally. That is gonna do it for what I watched in February. Let me know what you watched in February in the comment section down below, and be sure to subscribe so that way you don't miss what I watched in March. There are some bangers coming out in March. I am super excited for some of the releases in March. I think the thing I'm most excited for is good old Death of a Unicorn. That looks like it's going to be a fantastic film, and I really, really hope it is. So thank you all so much for watching. If you want to check out what I watched last month, you can check that out right over here. I'll see you there.